How to simplify fractions with plus and minus in between. There are two important things that you need to know. The first is how to expand an exponent. Let's say if you have 3 to the power of x plus 2, you can expand this and write it as 3 to the power of x multiplied by 3 to the power of 2. Because remember, when you multiply the same base, you add the exponent. So we had something like this. That is why we ended up with something like this. So you need to know how to expand this back to this. That is the first step. So the second step is that you need to know how to factorize in different ways. So in this video, we are going to learn now how to factorize in 3 ways when we have exponents with plus and minus in between. So let us first start with the first problem. So remember now, on the problem of exponents, you look at the base. If the base is not a prime number, you make sure that the base is a prime number. And then after that, you're going to now do what? Expand where you can. So if you look at the first problem, we are just having what? 2 to the power of t. But now this 2 to the power of t minus 2 can be expanded and written as what? As 2 to the power of t multiplied by 2 to the power of negative 2. And if you look at the bottom here, nothing can be expanded. So we're just going to write it as it is. So we have 3 multiplied by 2 to the power of t minus 2 to the power of t. So now after we have expanded, the second step, it will be now to factorize. Remember, you can factorize in different ways. But if you look at the top here, we can factorize by taking out a common factor. And then also at the bottom, we can factorize by taking out a common factor. Because at the top, 2 to the power of t is common in both the terms. So you're going to take 2 to the power of t out as a common factor, and then you open the bracket. So remember, when you factorize, you're going to say now the first term divided by the common factor. So 2 to the power of t divided by 2 to the power of t is just going to be 1. Then you keep the sign that you have in the middle, which is minus. And then you say now the second term divided by the common factor. So 2 to the power of t will cancel the 2 to the power of t. And what will remain is just going to be 2 to the power of negative 2. And then this is all divided by what? At the bottom, you can also take out the common factor because these are two terms. And then the common factor is what? Is 2 to the power of t. So if you take 2 to the power of t, you're going to say the first term divided by the common factor. And the 2 to the power of t will cancel out. And then what we are left with is just 3. Then you keep the sign as it is. And then you say now the second term is 2 to the power of t. Divided by 2 to the power of t, that's going to give us 1. So that is how you factorize by taking out the common factor. So now if you look at this, what is going to happen is that the common factor is same at the top and at the bottom. So these common factors will cancel out. And therefore now what is left is for you to simplify all this. So now inside the bracket here, you can just put that in your calculator. And therefore the answer in the bracket will just give you what? 3 over 4. And therefore also this is divided by what? 3 minus 1. 3 minus 1 is the same thing as what? As 2. So now if you can also put this in your calculator, you will just see now, okay, your answer is just going to be 3 over 8. So that is how you will do what? You will factorize or simplify the first problem. So now let us move on and look at the second problem. So on the second problem, what we have is 9 to the power of x minus 1 and 3 to the power of x plus 1. So if you look at the top here, we can just write a 9 as a base of a prime number. Remember, that's the first step that we do when we have exponents. So now what is 9? 9 is a base of a prime number. That's going to be 3 to the power of 2, all to the power of x. And then we have minus 1, all divided by what? 3 to the power of x plus 1. So now we can just simplify here to say this 2 to the, will multiply with x. And therefore what we have is just going to be 3 to the power of 2x minus 1, all divided by 3 to the power of x plus 1. So now, if we look at the expression at the top, we need to find ways on how to factorize it. Remember, like I said, you need to know how to factorize in different ways. So if you look at this here, we have a difference of 2 squares. Because now if you just put this inside the square root, for example, if you have 3 to the power of 2x, if you put it in the square root, that's going to be the same thing as what? As 3 to the power of x. Because the square root simply means you divide the exponent by 2. So now when you divide the exponent by 2, this will just become a 3 to the power of x. So that this is what? This is a perfect square. And then also 1 is a perfect square. So this means now at the top, we are having a difference of 2 squares. So you need to be able to see that. So if you have a difference of 2 squares, how do you factorize? You factorize by opening 2 brackets. So remember now already, this is the square root of the first one is just 3 to the power of x, and then the square root of 1 is 1. And then we have 3 to the power of x, and then we have 1. So remember the sign will be plus and minus because it's a difference of 2 squares. And this is all divided by what? By 3 to the power of x plus 1. So now if you look at this here, at the bottom we are having the same number, which is 3 to the power of x plus 1, and also at the top here. So that means this will cancel out that. And therefore, our answer will just be 3 to the power of x minus 1. That is how we will do the second problem. So now let's go and do the third problem. So on the third problem, we are just having what? 9 to the power of x plus 3 to the power of x minus 2. And then at the bottom, we have 9 to the power of x minus 4. So the first thing is to expand or maybe write everything as a base of a prime number if we can. So 9 can be written as a base of 3. So this is going to be 3 to the power of 2 all to the power of x. Then we have what? We have 3 to the power of x minus 2 all divided by what? 9 can also be written as 3 to the power of 2 all to the power of x minus 4. So now when we simplify this, it's just going to be what? At the top, we're just going to have 3 to the power of 2x plus 3 to the power of x minus 2. And then at the bottom, this will multiply. Also, we have what? 3 to the power of 2x minus 4. Like I said, you need to know different ways of factorizing, and then you have to be able to identify that. So if you look at the top here, we can clearly see that we have a trinomial. And then remember, if you factorize a trinomial, you open 2 brackets. So this is the same thing as what? As 3x to the power of 2. So this is like 3x squared. Then you have 3x, and then you have minus 2. This is an expression of a quadratic. And then if you simplify or factorize a quadratic, you are going to open 2 brackets. So you will say now, you have 2 brackets, and then you say, how can I write the first term here? The first term is 3 to the power of 2x. So 3 to the power of 2x can be written as what? 3 to the power of x multiplied by 3 to the power of x. So remember, if you say 3 to the power of x multiplied by 3 to the power of x, you're going to keep the base the same and you add the exponent. So x plus x will give you 2x. And then the second thing is that you're going to look at what? At the factors of the last term. So the last term is just 2, so the factors is 1 and 2 because 2 is a prime number. And then you look at what? At the factors that when you subtract them. Remember now the coefficient here is just 1 because this is the same thing as like our x here. So the coefficient is just 1. So we're going to look for the factors of 2 that when we minus them, they give us 1. So this gives us 1 when we minus them. So we're just going to write our factors is 1 and 2. And therefore, we're going to say the sign is negative. Therefore, our signs are going to be different. But the bigger number will take the sign of the middle term. So the bigger number is 2. So it's going to be positive and you have minus there. And then now, if we also move on at the bottom here, we need to also identify that this is a difference of 2 squares. Because what is happening, this is what? This is a perfect square, and then 4 is also a perfect square. So now how do we do that? We're just going to do that by opening 2 brackets because we have to factorize. So now when we say this one, a square root of this one, remember it's going to give us 3 to the power of x, and then the square root of 4 is just going to give us 2. Then we have 3 to the power of x, and then we have 2. This is going to be plus or minus because that is what? That is what we call a difference of 2 squares. And then in this problem, we need to identify things that are same, things that can cancel out. So this one here will cancel that one because they are the same. And therefore, the answer for this problem will just be 3 to the power of x minus 1, all divided by 3 to the power of x minus 2. And therefore, there's nothing you can do here. So this will be the final answer. Thank you very much.